History is not just a record of the things that have happened. History allows us to understand how and why certain events happen and how one thing leads to another. And in this one, I'm going to be diving deep into a few lessons of history, and more specifically, the lessons of history by Will and Ariel Durant. And in this one, I want to give you some lessons of history so that you can somewhat project into the future and somewhat be a little clairvoyant. So let's get into it. A civilization is majorly influenced by its geography, but that influence tends to decline with tech. And you see things like rivers, lakes, railway connections all play a vital role in the development of a city. And settlers have always been attracted to bodies of water due to the water itself, food, transportation, and trade. And take for example Mesopotamia, which is known as the crib of civilization. Mesopotamia was founded on settlements that was set up in between two great rivers known as the Euphrates and the Tigris. The space between these two rivers allowed the cultures like the Babylonians and the Sumerians to flourish and build incredible empires. And there are many other examples across the world, such as ancient Egypt with the Nile and ancient Rome with the Tiber, the Arno, and Po. But the thing about geographical conditions is they can always change, and a lot of civilizations were forced to relocate or in extreme circumstances declined. Civilizations can fall if rain becomes too scarce, such as some locations in Central Asia. And on the other side of this is if rainfall becomes too heavy, jungles can grow and smother cities, such as some parts in Central America. Technology though has changed our relationship with geography massively. With the improvement of transporting goods because of technology, this means that we're less influenced by geographical factors. Things like cars, trains, and planes have made it so much easier to transport goods. And, things like rivers and bodies of water have become more irrelevant with things such as planes, which could just transport things overhead. And this is why the commercial advantage of countries like England and France saw a downturn with the improvement of these modes of transport. And because of these modes of transport, the comparative advantage that these countries had because of their coastlines was soon pretty much eradicated, and countries like China, Russia, and Brazil weren't impeded because of their huge landmass. Life is a competition, and we're born unequal. And this competitive nature was inherited from our ancestors. And survival for them was dependent on fighting and killing, and they passed this inclination of violence down to us. We also tend to cooperate with one another because usually it gives the group a competitive advantage, and groups like families, nations, and communities allow us to compete with other groups. And the thing with states is states are just groups of people that organize themselves for protection against other organized groups. States usually only stop fighting if they come together to become members of an even larger protective group. And the authors say that inequality is natural. But you see, the thing is, there's natural inequality and there's man-made inequality. And usually the cost of equality means sacrificing freedom. People have different physical and mental strengths and weaknesses due to genetics. There's certain things we can continuously train at, but at some point our genetics become a hindrance. And the authors say that people, for the most part, are unequal from birth. Inherent inequalities increase as societies get more complex. And the reason behind this is complex societies require people with specialized capabilities. And the only way to reduce inequality is by restricting freedom. And why? And the freer people are, the more unequal they become. And unfair economic power is gained through freedom. Take 19th century England and the US. Back then, a laissez-faire policy was adopted by both nations. This meant that government intervention was restricted, and as a result of this, inequality skyrocketed. The time and culture that we're raised in is a precursor to our morals, personality, and social customs. Human nature hasn't really changed fundamentally throughout history. It's usually been a result of the culture that we've grew up in and have been raised in. And our basic instincts to eat, sleep, reproduce, have all essentially stayed the same. Technology is about the only thing that's radically different. And let's say there was a time traveler from ancient Greece. That time traveler would be about the same to us physically, but in a cultural sense would be radically different. And human evolution has always been more social as opposed to biological. And humankind has undergone drastic changes in economics, politics, intellect, and morality throughout history. And this doesn't change the fact that our cultural environment still determines our social behavior. And to say you were going to take a baby from ancient Egypt and drop them into modern day Miami, they'd still end up behaving like a modern day US citizen or Florida man, you know. Cultural innovation is a result of trial and error. Innovative individuals put ideas into the world, and if the majority like it, it's accepted. If not, it's rejected. Take the Prophet Muhammad. He inspired so many people, and so much so that the religion he founded ended up becoming the largest in the world. And some other examples of people who have changed the societal history include Napoleon, Marx, and Lenin. But with the Prophet Muhammad, his ideas ended up sticking around, and others such as Napoleon's ended up getting left behind. And that is it with this week's video. The thing with this book is there are a lot of golden nuggets, a lot of gems. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to come back next week and give a few more of these gems and nuggets. And if you got any value, as always, and until next time.